This is Jillian Hartley for Arkansas Northeastern College. I'm doing an oral interview with Bill Tyer, a person who's had a long history in Mississippi County and surrounding counties, has worked with sports on a multitude of levels and in education. Mr. Tyer, do I have your permission to record?
Yes, you do.
All right, thank you. So, can you first tell us where you were born and where did you spend your childhood?
Well, I was born in Lepanto, Arkansas, July 16, 1938, at 8 a.m. In my grandmother's upstairs bedroom. So.
In the home?
In the home, yeah.
Did you remember, like, I guess the doctors at that time would have just gone from home to home when needed?
They did go home to home, yes. So what
was your full name when you were born?
William Block Tyer, Jr.
Block.
See, Block is a Jewish name.
Okay.
And my father is William Block Sr. And his dad, he lived in Wynn. So there was a Jewish guy there that owned a clothing store and said, if you'll name him Block, we'll give you a suit of clothes. And so that's how that name got into the family.
Wow. Well, can you describe some of the makeup of your family?
Well, my father was from Wynn, Arkansas, and he was an athlete. He went to Arkansas, I guess, Teachers College then. I guess that's what they called it. And my mother was from Lepanto, and she went to ASU also. And that's where they met and married. And before I was born, I guess, they were both teachers at a small place in Mississippi County around Bondsville, Arkansas. Bondsville was kind of a plantation situation also. And she taught 1 through 4. He taught 5, 6, 7, 8 grades.
Now, where would Bondsville be located near today?
It's pretty close to where we are here in Wilson. Yes.
Okay.
It's probably the southern part of the county.
Okay.
Southern and eastern part of the county.
And they went to the Teachers College. Is that what is now Arkansas State?
Mm-hmm.
Started off as a Teachers College. So you have a lot of education yourself,
yes.
And you worked a lot in education.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us describe your background for us? How did you go to college?
Well, I graduated in 1956. I didn't get my diploma. We had to go. We went on a senior trip there, and we worked for four years raising money. And we went on a 2-week trip. We went to Nashville, the University of Virginia, Washington, D.C., New York City, and then made the trip back and had money left. They gave us each some money out. But to get your diploma, you're supposed to have written a composition about the trip, and I didn't.
Really?
So, but I knew all I had to do was get a transcript to go to college. Yeah. See, and there were very few people out of our class who went to college. Maybe we had about 35, maybe 3 or 4 went to college. Yeah.
So you made it up through 12th grade. How common was that at the time?
Oh yeah, it was pretty common then.
Okay.
Yes, in the 50s, yes. Yeah.
Now I know you come from a farming family.
Mm-hmm.
So for looking at kind of agriculture history, how would you classify your family? Were you sharecroppers, landowners? What was your...
Well, they were, my father, during the, after the Depression, he told me that all you had to do is sign your name on to buy land. And he, I think, bought maybe 450 or 500 acres because he was scared he couldn't pay for it. And so he bought some land, and then he had his own land, and then he rented a lot of land from Porter's Mercantile Company. It was headquarters in Lepanto, Arkansas. And so with that, we had sharecroppers on the farm, okay? And the families, what the families did, Miss Hartley, was that they would get 8 or 9 acres of cotton, and the kids would work the cotton out, and then they would pick it, and then they would get 50% of the proceeds after the cotton was ginned. And that's kind of the way the sharecropper thing worked. And then the males were mostly tractor drivers for my dad at that time, the males of the family.
Did you find that a lot of your friends were the children of
yeah.
the sharecroppers? And
See, we were living in West Ridge, and West Ridge is Mississippi County High School, and it was, I guess, made after the Depression. You know, the WPA, they built that school there. See, and from West Ridge you go to Etowah. Well, I always said that Etowah was a place where time stood still.
well, it's so you. Of course, I know the answer is probably going to be cotton, but cotton was probably the dominant crop. Were there any other crops that were grown? You know, you mentioned the use of a tractor. When you were growing up, was that the dominant form?
Well, early on, everything was done by mules early on. Okay, and my dad got into farming, working for my granddaddy on my mother's side, and he was called a riding boss, and he was an overseer of the people working, but it was all done on horses. He was on a horse, and all the work was done with mules, a team of mules, and they'd get up at 6 in the morning and work till 6 at night. 12-hour day, take an hour off for lunch.
Yeah. Did you have did your mom, was she somebody who pretty much stayed home? What kind of what was her day-to-day like?
At that time, yeah, she stayed home.
Did you have many siblings or?
Had one brother.
Okay.
He was 3 years old and born in 1941, and we were living in West Ridge, and I heard something. I woke up and walked in, and it was a 2-bedroom house, small house, and walked up in the front, and he was being delivered at that time.
Wow.
But, you know, we went on from that. And,
well, I think one of the things, too, because, you know, you may, you know, from previous conversations with you, I know that you do have some memories from kind of the latter part of the Depression, as well as some memories that I want to explore with you. And that is the fact that your dad did hire some German prisoners of war.
Yes. Well, see, there was a prison camp in Kaiser, in that Kaiser area, I don't know exactly, and one down around Mark Tree. And what they did was they would take these prisoners out and to pick cotton, to do labor work, and my memory of them was they were there on the farm at West Ridge, and they were digging big holes to put fuel tanks in. They had on those big old heavy coats, you know, and working, just standing around. You know, just I don't remember any guards or anything around them, but you know, and he was giving them a little extra money to pick cotton, and the government found out and made him quit. Give him a little incentive to pick a little more cotton.
So they did the cotton as well as digging the tanks.
Oh yeah, they did all kind of labor.
Do you remember anything about them? Like, did they seem friendly?
No, they were friendly.
They
yeah.
were friendly?
I was out there just running around with them.
How old would you have been about that time?
Probably, let's see, 44, 45. I was 6 or 7, maybe
Okay.
5, 6, 7.
Well, and kind of on the tail end of the Depression, you see, you know, I know things are going to change a lot because of the war, especially with the economy, but you're still at a time where people very much are living like they had in the 30s during the Depression.
Oh, yes.
So are there any standouts for you from that era that you can share?
Yes. You know, we didn't have any electricity. And I remember my mother cooked on a stove that I can't remember if it was coal or wood or whatever. And, you know, we had chickens running around the house and a rooster that would chase you. And had a little 12 or 15 acre pasture there, had some cows and hogs and So, at one time on the farm, we'd have hog killing time. And all of the people that worked on the farm would come in. We had a guy that shot the hog in the head, and then they boil them, and then chitlins, and that was the way, the way we lived. And we had a little outhouse in the back. It wasn't not for using yourself, but it was a place that they hung the hams. It's like these little buildings you see at Lowe's and stuff. They had the hams hung up in them, and and we had a potato patch, and they'd put the potatoes under the house, and my job was to go up under the house and get the potatoes out. So we didn't have much meat.
Well, when looking at, obviously the requirements for labor have changed a lot in agriculture, and a lot of what you kind of describe compared to today, you've witnessed a lot of changes.
Yes, everything done up to 1960 just about was by hand. And so, we always talk about immigrants here today. Well, we had a lot of immigrants on our farm. We had 200 braceros. Mm-hmm. And when they first started going to Mexico, all you had to do is take a big truck down there, load you some workers up, and bring them back up here, and they would stay until the crop was over. Then most of them would go home. And we had 200 to pick cotton up here.
Now, with the Bracero, that was an actual government program.
Oh, yeah, it ended up being a government program.
Okay.
Yes, it ended up being a government program. Mm-hmm.
So the laborers brought in, typically, are you looking at just for a few months during?
They came up for the cotton picking.
For the picking.
Yes. See, in my job, I said 200. I had 100 of them that I weighed cotton for. This was 1960, and I had just got out of college and was working at Mississippi County High School as a math teacher. My salary for the 9 months, Miss Hartley, was $2,700.
Wow.
I got an extra $300 for the 9 months for driving a bus in the morning, afternoon. So I made $3,000. So I was supplementing my income here by working for my father.
So, quick question, because you talk about weighing cotton.
Oh.
Could you describe that? What is that process? What would it have looked like in 1960?
Well, there was a scale hung up on the trailer, and the guys would cut the end out of the cotton sacks. And so they would come up, and I would weigh them and just hang them there and weigh them. And instead of having their names, we had them numbered. Had their name, but had numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so we'd register that, had these big old long trailers, and after they dumped the cotton, I'd have to get up there and stomp it down. So the more cotton you got on the trailer, the less trailers you needed. And so those gins then didn't gin very much cotton per hour at West Ridge. See, there was a railroad all the way from Lepanto to West Ridge to that gin.
Do you remember what it was called?
I can't remember the name of the railroad.
Well, about how much would these scales weigh? Do you remember, what was sort of the average?
They'd weigh up to probably 200, maybe. Okay. Yeah, they would just pull down,
Well, and I think, one of the things you've kind of talked a little bit about is sort of the change in compensation. So you come back from college,
mm-hmm.
but you're also finding other things to do that can supplement income.
Yes.
Because as you point out, you were making, what was it, 20?
Well, $3,000 for the 9 months.
Yeah. Well, looking at the community at that time, and even kind of going back to your high school years, looking from the way that many people worked in agriculture, kind of went to town probably on Saturdays.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us a little insight of what the culture was like? All those, we're looking at.
We were in 60.
Yeah.
We were still had sharecroppers, and even then, and with supplementing them we just didn't have enough people to pick all that cotton. And so, like I said, Saturday afternoon, everything kind of shut down. And my job then was I would load the braceros up and take them to Lepanto and let them do what they wanted to do and buy stuff. And then After the weekend with them, on Monday, they'd always give me some money, so I'd go to the bank and get money orders to send back to Mexico for them. But the regular population, those streets would be packed, Miss Hartley, from sidewalk to sidewalk. Maybe the 10-foot sidewalk, they were packed. We had 2 theaters, one right across the street from each other. And, when I was a kid, you get a quarter, and on Saturday, you get to see 2 cowboy shows. One here, have enough money to get you some popcorn.
Yeah. Well, and you also mentioned Lepanto, and I know from previous conversations with you, I believe that's the place that you all tried to get Elvis to come.
Mm-hmm.
Could you
my
share?
Senior year, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was, in '56, he kind of hit the big time, but, coming up, he started playing that guitar and singing, and he'd go to the honky-tonks, high schools, and so, we were having all these senior projects, and so 2 girls and I wanted Elvis to come to Lepanto, and he wanted 75% of the gate, and we got voted down, and 3 or 4 months later they sold that his label to RCA Victor, and there was nothing you could do to get Elvis. But, we'd heard about him when I was in high school, and we'd go to Memphis and go to the street corners there on Main in Memphis because he would be circling just to see him,
Wow. Kind of looking at reflections on agriculture, and obviously there's been a lot of changes, from what you can look with your experience and your dad working in agriculture. What would you say were some of the biggest challenges for farmers at that time?
Well, one of the biggest challenges was getting enough labor, see. And because, like I said, everything was done by hand. So you had to have a lot of workers. Well, another thing, Miss Hartley, too, had just hit my mind, to help get the grass out of those fields. They'd put a fence around, say, like 40 acres, and put 1 goose to the acre in there. And those geese would eat the grass and keep it beat down, because then there were no chemicals.
Right.
And Johnson grass, I don't know if you know what Johnson grass is, but it was tough. It had rhizomes, long rhizomes, and it was hard to kill. They just kept pecking on it and eating it, and would kill it out. Now this was before chemicals, and the chemicals came in. It was just probably the first chemical that I can remember was Treflan. Treflan was a grass killer.
So no more geese
necessarily.
necessarily.
And that kind of replaced the geese.
Okay.
And then in the soybean seed, they had something called dinitro that would kill the cucumber.
Really?
And not kill the those are the first chemicals I had.
So those, are we looking at mid-60s or?
Oh, probably.
Probably.
That's
Well, so kind of looking at you're someone who taught, and your parents taught in addition to farming. Did your dad continue to farm? Did he eventually transition mostly into education, or?
No, he started education, went to farming.
Okay, he started education, went to farming. Because, when we look at the 50s and the 60s, that's actually the time period where there's a lot of depopulation of the area.
Yes.
So obviously there's a lot of setbacks for some people. So is there anything that you could offer about, how did people cope with setbacks at that time? Was there a sense of I can stay and get this, or why might some people have left?
See, I think they got together teaching probably in 32, 33, somewhere in there, because they graduated in 1932, from over there, I guess. And he was an athlete there too. I got his freshman sweater and his senior sweater in my home under glass. Yes.
Oh, That's really neat.
But then that progressed on into him getting with my granddad as riding boss, and then later on becoming a landowner himself. Oh, and you were talking about the Depression. Again, he told me after World War II he made enough money in 1 year to pay off the land.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Because of that demand for crops,
yes.
because of the war.
Mm-hmm. See, the farmers were essential workers. They did not have to go in the draft. And Miss Hartley, you would go into the stores there in Lepanto. There would be nothing in there. You had to have a coupon to buy a pair of shoes.
And where would you get the coupon?
I guess the government, would give it. I was a kid, so you just go in. There would be nothing in the stores, hardly anything, because everything was geared to the war effort.
Mm-hmm.
No sugar. You couldn't get sugar. I remember in '47, probably the first bubble gum I got after the war.
Well, you growing up on the farm, having those experiences, and kind of growing up with that culture, there's a lot to it that really requires a good work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
And having known you for a number of years, you definitely have a strong work ethic. You've had such a long, wonderful career. Do you think that was somewhat influenced by growing up in that sort of rural agriculture?
Well, you had no choice.
Life? You had no choice.
Either do something or not eat. But you kind of transition into that stuff, see, because teaching was not but 9 months, and so I may not ought to say this, but I was a hoe boss. And my job in the spring was I would pick up all the people there on the farm the sharecroppers and stuff, and they chop cotton.
Mm-hmm.
And I would round them up, take them to the field, and they chopped. And so what I would do then, I'd have to go from side to side, row to row, to see if they're knocking them weeds out. And that was my spring job. Yeah.
And of course, we're going to kind of get into some of your sports history here in a minute. But as far as like your life on the farm growing up, going to school in the rural Delta area of Arkansas, is there anything else that you can think out that stands out that you want to share?
Well, I started to school there at Misco, first grade, in the summer. See, the schools then, the farm schools revolved around the crop. It was called split term. And, when the cotton was ready to pick, we would start, we'd start in the spring after the cotton was laid by. And so then we'd go to school till the cotton opened. And when the cotton opened, the school shut out. And so then everybody would be picking cotton.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that worked.
It's kind of interesting, too, because we seem to be seeing the alteration of school days again, right now with what's really necessary and so forth.
Yeah, I think I was fortunate. My mother taught me before I went to school. See.
So having educated parents probably helped a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're going to kind of shift because I want to look at, you went to college. So you went to what is now Arkansas State. Was it Arkansas College at the time you went to? What am I thinking?
Arkansas State College.
In Jonesboro, Arkansas. So it's about...
I went there in 1956.
So when you go off to college, wasn't an adjustment for you?
Not really.
Not really?
No, see, Miss Hartley, I had such a good high school education. We went over there, and there were no ACT scores or nothing.
Yeah.
And so what they did, they gave us some kind of test to see how many hours you could take. So I tested. I got where I could take 18 hours. See, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 o'clock. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 8 o'clock. They made sure they had you, and there was a lot of people in school too. But then, there was no financial aid. Had a lot of GI Bills. and people working their way through. And that's how you got in. And the first day we were there, old Dean Moore, they called him, had us all in the Wilson Hall. And so we said, look to your right, okay. Look to your left, okay. 2 weeks they won't be here. He was right.
Really?
All the dorms were stacked up, and then they kind of withered out of there.
Did you live on campus, or
Oh,
did
yeah,
you
I
go
lived in a
drive
dorm.
back and forth?
Oh, yes, Miss Hartley. And then we had to take ROTC. It ain't a disease. As Andy Griffin thought.
This was their way of preparing young men just in
yeah.
case there was some other
Yeah, this is 56.
war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had to do 2 hours of military science a week classroom. And then it said 2 hours of drill, but it was longer than that. I had a complete Army uniform from head, cap to toe. Had to shine your shoes, had to shine your brass, had to do drills. We had our own M1 that we had to be able to put together, and they'd time us. It was serious. And if you didn't make your C average, you were headed to the draft board. So that was a big incentive.
I was going to say that was an incentive. And
Yeah,
so now was it required the whole time you were in school?
The first 2 years.
Okay, the first 2 years.
First 2 years, yes. And so that was kind of an incentive to me. You know, Miss Hartley, I'd been housed up. I was kind of green
When you went to college.
when I went to college. Kind of let loose there. And my I hate to say this, but my only goal was to make a C.
Well,
The first 2 years.
So you're at college. It's the late 50s, because you said you went in, was it 56?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so what was the makeup like? Were there a lot of female students? Were predominantly male? You know, is probably...
It was probably even.
Okay.
But see, now that since you said that, the females to go home on the weekends had to have a note. And then they had to be back in that dorm at a certain time on Sunday. Now, the males didn't.
So the rules didn't apply to the men?
Well, there's different rules.
Different rules.
And we've taken care of the females. But a lot of times I didn't have a car or nothing, Miss Hartley. I hitchhiked back to Lepanto many times.
Would you say hitchhiking was more of a normal thing? Like it was more of an...
Well, if you didn't have a car.
You didn't do... Yeah. It's one of those things that I think has changed over the years. You also mentioned that you went to Wilson Hall. So there is a connection there with Wilson
they
family.
were the big donors on the campus even then. R.E. Lee Wilson Hall.
Yeah.
That's what it was called.
And the Wilson family from Mississippi County. You know, yeah.
And then the top honor graduate got the Wilson Award, even then.
But you made C's, so...
Yeah.
But
That's all I wanted to do.
Well, yeah. Well, and you come from an educated family and a background, and you've got a goal. And what was your goal going in? Did you intend to? What was your major? I know you've coached for many years.
My major then was math, and like I said, I went for 4 years, Miss Hartley. We're kind of backing up here, and I got out, so I started teaching. Then all you had to do is have 2 years of college to teach.
Yeah.
And I was overloaded. I taught 7th, 8th, 9th, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, all day, and then the farming thing, see. That's how that kind of worked.
So
Started in July, too.
I'm going to ask you this is a very important question.
Okay.
How did your career in sports begin?
It was always there.
Okay.
It was all, see, because another thing, back then, Miss Hartley, after, I played football. I lettered in 4 sports in high school. Then my senior year, last game, my senior year in football, I tore all the ligaments up in my foot. I love basketball, so that threw me out of anything. So that's about 1.5 years of rehab to get back. And so those ensuing years, I played what they call semi-pro basketball. And we had a team, and we'd play like on Wednesday nights, Saturday nights, and Sunday afternoons and stuff. And we played Memphis State's freshmen. We played over at Southern Baptist then, Williams Baptist. Now played Air Force bases. Played all around. And as long as I was doing that, I got my fix. See? Mm-hmm. And I was the coach of that team, and I guess general manager or whatever. But that was the fix. All right. Then in the summers, had country baseball. And I was teaching it there at Misco, and so I started playing for Etowah. And we played it Sunday afternoons, Wednesday nights, stuff like that. And up here in Blytheville, they had a team, and Lepanto had a team. It was just all around. That's how I got to know a lot of people in Mississippi County, just through this stuff. And the Ashmores and Billy Brown that were in our booster club, and a guy named Max Heffley was from Lepanto originally. That's how I ended up getting this job up in '81 up here. But that was in the culture, see, and then there was no, we were still segregated. But we would play black basketball teams, and one 4th of July, we went over to Birdsong. I don't know, it's here in Mississippi County, and the black community there had a baseball field that their owners had let them have, and all around it was cotton, and there was a juke joint over here on the side, and so we were over there playing, and that's how I got to know so many people, and be into the culture of this county.
Well, with segregation too, you talk about playing black schools. How many were there in Mississippi County? Because there are obviously lots of small, scattered out schools.
Yes,
all through.
And here's the deal, Miss Hartley. In Lepanto, where I ended up going to high school there. The black elementary school was 6 miles out of town. If you wanted to go to high school, you had to go to Mark Tree High School. So Osceola had a black high school, Rosenwald. Blytheville, I think it was Harrison High School. Wilson, I can't remember. It was out here someplace they had a high school. Probably Shawnee, Joyner. They called the high school then Shawnee High School. Dice.
Mm-hmm. So when, you have the court case, obviously, the Brown case mm-hmm. that desegregated, but for as many of us know, it took years for that actually to take place.
It was 1970 when this area first integrated.
And you remember it well, I guess.
It wasn't but a few students originally.
Yeah. Well, and having those memories and that reflections, you really are a person who's a source of a lot of really good information to see how that impacted schools. And mm-hmm. do you have any kind of overall?
I was coaching at Lepanto in '70 when we integrated, and it was no problems.
No problem there.
No problems. No, I don't think there was really in this area at Rivercrest then, and I don't think there was that, to my knowledge.
Yeah. So one of the things that you've already touched upon a little bit is the popularity of sports. And I think it's fair to say that sports are probably more popular in this region of the country than in others. Mm. So do you have any ideas of why that is?
It was built into the culture.
Yeah.
It was on 4th of July at home. Our home baseball team, our town team, would always have a big baseball game in the afternoons. On 4th of July, it was a big deal. There'd be hundreds of people there, and Because Miss Hartley, I guess there wasn't nothing else to do.
Well, I was going to say, you said earlier, too, that was your way of getting around.
Yeah.
You know, you could go here and kind of see other people do other things outside of the town in which you grew up in.
Yeah, it was, you know, we didn't have the things to do to take up our time that we got to now.
That's true. Well, and another thing, too, so I'm going to switch gears a little bit, sticking with Mississippi County, but there's something that happened here, which was the opening of an Air Force Base in the mid-50s. So you talked a little bit about the prisoners of war, your dad, you know, working on your dad's land and working for farmers around the area. Of course, the area that will become Blytheville Air Force Base was a strip, I believe, during World War II. But I think it's in, 1954, 1955, that it becomes a full-fledged Air Force Base.
I really don't know, Miss Hartley. Let me tell you this. Where I live, Blytheville was like you didn't go into a foreign country.
Okay.
Really?
You
didn't go anywhere.
Well, and that was, but as far as miles go, what is that, maybe 30 miles?
Yeah, but it's still.
But still, having like a...
When your roads were gravel.
When you Well, that's true. And that's a good point because, you know, with the base coming, obviously it came about a time where, you know, the Soviet Union actually had the atomic bomb, and then the United States an H-bomb, and then the Soviet Union an H-bomb. So from your just sort of day-to-day life in the 50s and the 60s, you know, did you have any concerns about the Soviet Union?
No.
No. So
I had other things to worry about. I'm being honest. You know, when we did the little drills when I was in grade school.
Yeah.
And
so, what could you
getting under the
describe?
desk
You get under the desk. Would they just say, "Was there a bell, or was there?"
It was probably a bell.
Just some kind of.
We had those drills we did.
Yeah. And having a base here, though, did technically make this area a potential target.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. But as far as your day-to-day life,
no.
Just,
not mine. I don't think many people.
Well, you talked about how, you know, if you were in college making a C, you couldn't get drafted.
Yeah, that's right.
So you would not have been old enough to potentially be drafted to go to the Korean conflict.
My age got me out of all of them.
Yeah. And in Vietnam, you were technically done with school, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, before Vietnam. Did you have any, with all of those things happening worldwide, did you have any sort of strong feelings about them? You know, did you, obviously there's this war against communism going on between the United States, Soviet Union, and all of the influences in different places.
Yeah, I was not drafted. I was in the draft, but I was not drafted for whatever reason.
For Vietnam, you could have been drafted.
Vietnam, yes.
You were up for it.
I'm too young for Korea.
Yeah.
But I remember the Korean War and pretty vividly, and the things going on in Vietnam. But
did you, like with the Korean War, did you have any family members who, I know being farming, actually lessened the likelihood of being called upon?
It was more in World War II that some of my family,
okay,
and cousins and stuff.
Of course, the thing is, you're someone though who does keep up a lot with politics.
A little bit.
Yeah, for the Cold War era, when looking at the politics of it, did you find yourself, was there particular leaders that stood out? Was, when you look at somebody like President Kennedy, for example, were there any particular things about leaders from that era that stood out to you, and their vision?
Well, when the conflict in Cuba, I remember that, LBJ and JFK, but I don't know. I just don't think people were.
Would you say in this area of the country something like maybe Johnson's Great Society had more of an impact, in the immediate?
Yeah, that did have a great impact.
Did it help a lot of your students, because you would have been teaching around that time? Yeah, I know a lot of students in this area qualified for certain programs and stuff.
The biggie was the FDR
Yeah.
after the Depression.
And so, kind of moving on, because obviously, you probably kept up with certain things like the space race.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of these things.
That was locked to the TV, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the television allowed you to be connected in ways.
Yes.
Do you remember the first TV?
Yeah.
By chance?
Yeah. My grandmother had a 13-inch TV in a cabinet about as 3 feet tall and 2 feet wide. And here's one reason wrestling is so important into our society. When we first got TV, there was nothing but local programming. Okay, coming out of Memphis, WMC, coming out of Memphis, and it had the country music. And on Monday night, at I don't know what 9 o'clock, from Ellis Auditorium out of Memphis, Tennessee, was live wrestling, and we'd have 3 or 4 families over of our families to come over there and watch that wrestling.
So did you have any wrestlers from the time period that were like that you rooted for, or
Well, the champion was Luthez. Probably never heard of Luthez. But then Sputnik Monroe. See, Sputnik would come to those little towns of Lepanto, and he'd fire everybody up because he would get with the black community and just it was all talking and calling people names,
Yeah.
like it is today. I've told you we're in the WWE world today.
Well, and being, it's interesting you mentioned too, they moved around the area. A lot of these really pretty well known wrestlers from Memphis would go around, from what I remember being told, sometimes even play ball games.
Jerry the King Lawler.
Yeah.
And see, and the television didn't come on then till in the afternoon by the time school was out. First program come on was Howdy Doody. I can still remember Howdy Doody. It's Howdy Doody time. Let's give a rowdy cheer because Howdy Doody's here. And Buffalo Bob. That was the first programs that came on.
Now, I've heard of Howdy Doody. I don't think I've ever heard of Buffalo Bob.
Well, that was the.
Was that a local thing, or was
that was I don't know. It's probably it was a national thing.
Okay.
And he was Howdy Doody was a puppet, and Buffalo Bob was the actual person.
Got you.
I think it's Buffalo Bob.
Well, and talking about wrestling and stuff, and the culture, this is a culture. Their sports is ingrained in this area. It's something that people sometimes from other areas kind of come to and don't see it is from their perspective until they live here. They realize how people kind of live and breathe culture, and I think that you make a point about wrestling, and wrestling in a lot of ways plays off of that culture. Do you agree? Sort of the
country music, see, those were the 2 biggies.
Okay, country music too.
That was the Slim Rhodes and his mother's best Mountaineers was on live TV there in Memphis.
Well, and some of those acts would come and play.
Oh yeah, they played local.
Yeah. Do you remember anybody who ever went on to become really famous, other than Elvis?
Well, Jerry Lee Lewis.
Okay.
So I stood as close to you and me and watched Jerry Lee play the piano.
Where
and
was
there was coming up through old 61. There's a place. It was called the Rebel Club, and that's where the high school students and college students would go. And there was a band called Sonny Burgess. Sonny Burgess. I can't remember his band name, but he would sing in there. And then they'd have some people like Jerry Lee come in to that place. And there was another place over at West Memphis where Poncho's was.
Yeah, I know what you're talking
about.
They
had a dance place in the back for high school. It was college kids, mostly college kids, and some high school kids there. Had a guy back there like James Brown singing,
Many people know of Memphis and Beale Street. But I have been told that West Memphis at one point was a kind of a happening area.
It was a happening area, yeah.
So we're going to shift gears a little bit. And we're going to kind of get into your history with the college. But before we do that, is there anything else kind of from this era before we move on that we've overlooked?
You know, we've come a long way. That's from mules to now. You don't even see anybody out there. You see no weeds. You know, it's just in agriculture. It's just amazing what's happened.
Yeah.
You don't need to labor like you did.
So, you have been with Arkansas Northeastern College since, is it 1981?
81.
Okay. And of course, we're in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And what is that?
I don't know.
43?
43.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's back up a little bit. Before,
Okay.
You know, after a while, I got this bug to coach, you know, after doing all this playing and stuff. And so I decided to go back over to ASU to get my degree. And those 6 hours then were like 30 or something. So I've done all that high math, and I didn't want to go through all that stuff again. And so I said, well, let me look. Econ. So I got me a BS in econ.
Okay.
All right, and I started, then I started on my master's. And I got involved in the basketball program there. I saw the head coach out one night, and I just walked up and introduced myself. I said, my name's Bill Tyer. I'd like to learn how to coach. And I think he was about half drunk. And he said, all right, see me in my office Monday. I'm not lying now. And so I went in, and he made me, I was in charge of statistics. I was in charge of filming. And I got to be on the court, walking around trying to learn stuff. And something happened. Then they had a JV basketball program. Freshmen were not eligible to play in college basketball. So they had them a JV team. And I was helping the guy that was the JV coach, too. And something happened. He left. And so I got promoted to the head JV coach. And I think, well, we had a 16-2 record. I was the best record in school history, but I did not know anything about basketball, Miss Hartley.
You didn't know anything about it?
I really no. And so, but I was there.
But you were learning.
I was learning.
Yeah.
And so after I was there, and in 3 years I was his head man. I did all the recruiting for Arkansas State. I went all over the country recruiting. And so he got fired, and they had a new guy come in. I didn't like the guy. So I resigned and got a job at Greene County Tech High School. And that's where I really learned how to coach. I'm going to ask you a question. What's your definition of a coach?
Somebody there to help and encourage people to do their best, and also to let them know that it's okay when they haven't performed at their highest.
Now, you asked me that question.
What's your definition of a coach, Bill?
Something that you can get in and ride.
That's good.
I'm a teacher,
Yeah,
not a coach.
I got you.
See, and that's where I learned how to teach. And so I got every resource. Bobby Knight had a video. I got a hold of that video that talked about defense. And he had his head assistant got the job at Ole Miss. And so Knight went down there and went through a practice, and I, coaches were invited. So I went down there and saw all this stuff. And so I implemented it in the high school there. The first year I was there, Miss Hartley, we won 5 games.
Wow.
5 and 19.
That's
And here I am. Tech then was in a turmoil because Tech had always been a farm school. Industry had moved in. So there was a turmoil into the high school. And so They were trying to get rid of the superintendent. They were trying to get rid of this person. And here I am, long-haired, driving a Corvette and had a Lincoln Town Car with an orange black top on it, and they're in a coach. They thought I was in the mafia. So I saw their first football game, Miss Hartley, and they were cussing the coach up one side and down the other. And I thought, my goodness, what have I got myself into? And this is true. I'm telling you. So the first day of practice, I lined them up all over there in the gym, and I said, listen, boys, here's the deal. Y'all can either be politicians, because they're trying to get them to sign petitions to get rid of superintendent and principals, or you can be basketball players. You need to make up your mind. And oh, by the way, if your parents holler and scream and cuss me, I'm coming up into the stands and kicking their, make sure you go home and tell them. I was there 3 years and never had a call. Yep. But after the 5 deal, I had a guy helping me, and they wanted to fire him. He was a Yankee. Mitchell was his last name. I won't give his first name, but he comes to me after the season's over and says, Coach, they're going to fire me. Will you help me? I said, yeah. He'd been loyal. Mm-hmm. What do you do? I could have thrown him under the bus. So we go to the school board meeting, Miss Hartley. And they have their lawyers. He has his lawyer, and I'm the first witness. The first question they asked me, and I want you to answer this for me. Do you think we can get anybody in here better than Coach Mitchell? What would you say?
I would probably say no, but I'm assuming that. What did they say?
Now, what do you think I said? Yes.
You said okay, yeah.
Yeah. You can get somebody in here
There's
better.
Somebody out there, right? Yeah.
We can get a better superintendent. I think he's been there ever since.
You could almost get a better anybody. Yeah. You look hard enough.
But, and that's where I really learned. And then the next year, we lost one conference game, lost 4 seniors. They said, no, they're not going to be any good. We were even better. And then I got a call to go to UCA and work under a Hall of Fame guy. Then I came to Blytheville in '81.
So you had quite a bit of experience when you came here. Although the college wasn't very old. No, it had only been, really the main building had only been open for just a few years, correct?
Yes. That was about all that was there. I think the B wing had a trailer or didn't have anything. Then they put a trailer over there for the B wing. But
well, so when you look at the early years of the college, what do you see? Like, what do you know about its foundation since you came in just a few years after it started, and what were some of the early years like?
Well, the first years there, the solar thing was working. Mm-hmm. I mean, they had a program that only each classroom would turn on, turn off, and had a guy named Dr. Earl Stedman was in there. He was in charge of the solar part of it, and had lots of students. The air base was lots and lots of students. Seemed like, Miss Hartley. I mean,
did it seem strange that a solar panel project of that magnitude would be here in Mississippi, be in Mississippi County?
Well, I really don't know how it got here, but it was the government, I guess, was looking at things, mm-hmm. and when they decided not to do it anymore, what they told us was that they couldn't keep them clean. Wasn't enough sun. Really, that's what they told us.
Living in this area of the country, I don't think that was true.
Well,
because...
we ended up non-solar then.
Well, I say that it's not true because we've seen a resurgence of solar panels in this neck of the woods all over the place.
Well, driving up here today, I thought to myself, how can we be here in Mississippi County in a cotton patch, solar panels, and steel mills all down the road at one time?
Well, so you begin coaching. What was the speaking of solar panels? What was the name of the teams, and then what sports did you coach in those early years?
Uh, the name of the team when I got here were the Sons.
Okay.
Before it was the Cherokees.
Okay.
After the Indians, and they played their games out at Burdett. I know they did because I brought the ASU JV over here and we played them.
So they were playing a little bit before. So you had basketball.
We had girls basketball and boys basketball.
What about baseball?
No baseball. Cheerleaders.
Okay.
Oh, lots of clubs.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of clubs.
And it makes sense because so many of the high schools had that.
Yes.
So that was something a lot of students
Mm-hmm.
expected
Mm-hmm.
when they went to college.
Yes.
So when looking at the college, during those early years, is there anyone who's notable that kind of stood out to you? You know, you've being in an institution for so many years, you've known so many people affiliated with it, but are there any early kind of standouts?
Oh, Dr. Smith, he was
Harry Smith.
Harry
Yeah.
Smith, yeah. I called him Light Horse Harry, but yeah, he was really a people person.
He was the first president.
He was the first president. I think the school takes its identity from its leader. That's what I think.
So what are some of the ways that he was?
Well, we had parties out at the base with the faculty and students. We had a lecture series there. It was informative. They'd bring speakers in from around the country to speak to us. And
Was there a lot of community involvement?
yes,
in
the
those
community
things?
involvement. We had our theater and choir and had their things like that. And he would.
So with the sports culture very early on, I'm assuming the games were probably pretty well attended, and were there quite a few what we would maybe call like boosters? What would we?
Yes. All right.
Yeah.
When I got here, there was a booster club.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now the booster club originally was started by a guy named Max Heffley. Max Heffley was a World War II veteran, and when I was in elementary school at Lepanto, he got out of World War II and was a coach and a principal at Lepanto and married a Lepanto girl. All right, you reverse on up here, and I'm here in 81. But before I got here, he established the Booster Club. The Booster Club put up $50,000 and built that building on David Lane, okay, to have athletics in it and have physical education in it. And then what the college did, they paid the payment. When I got here in 81, that was already there for me. I didn't get the job until August, Miss Hartley.
Okay.
So I had to get out and get me a team in about 2 or 3 weeks, and I did it. But I knew how to recruit.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm not bragging, but I can pick people out that I know that can play for me.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they gave me the resources to do. And the court, rubber floor,
Mm-hmm.
stands on one side, and they had the other side, they had fixed it where the kids could live, the males could live.
So they actually lived.
Yes, they lived there.
They weren't
Mm-hmm.
a formal dorm, but
Yeah, it was
they
a
had
little dorm.
a little
type
dorm, a
for
little living
them to
space.
eat and sleep, and then the ladies they rented them a house,
Okay.
and so when I moved in, what am I going to do? I don't want to get no apartment. I got me a trailer,
Okay.
and the Booster Club let me park it right by the gym, so I tapped in to the resources of the college.
Well, so how long did they have the basketball team?
Oh, from 81. I don't know what year they started, but I got there in 81, so
Okay.
I was there 11. I coached 11.
11 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the culture kind of shifted a little bit.
Oh, the culture shifted, yes.
Yeah. And so, when kind of looking at the culture shift, and especially regarding sports, what are some of the things you think influenced the shift?
Leadership.
Leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Was
Ms. Hartley, we ran a national program.
Yeah.
Had people from Washington State come in to look to see what we were doing and recruit our players.
I've seen photos, and I've heard many stories from people over the years of what a role model you were to your students, not only the ones at ANC but the ones elsewhere. So when that shift occurred, you did stay. Like you've continued to work there, teaching.
See, we had a lot of support internally.
Yeah.
Internally.
Yeah.
That helped.
Well, and this is what I'm asking, because I think the air base did close in, like, when was it, 91, 92? Was there any, when the base announced it was closing, and I'm thinking it's 92 that announcement was made.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see any major changes at the institution? Did you see a huge shift right away in enrollment? Because, like you did say, a lot of the students came, the base kind of having...
Yeah, we had a lot of females from the base.
From the base.
A lot of females.
Was it more diverse?
Huh?
Was the student population
yes,
more
it was
diverse?
They were from everywhere.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Backgrounds from all
Yeah.
kinds, and
yeah.
So
the base, Miss Hartley, I don't know how many people lived out there.
Yeah.
See, and the Gosnell High School got government funding. They could pay their teachers more and had more resources than the public schools.
Yeah, because they were basically, Gosnell didn't have a school really until the base.
Is
that correct?
I really don't know. I don't know.
But the base sort of had this. There was a massive investment there by the federal government that kind of ensured that there would be. It's an economic stimulus.
Yes.
For the area and the college. Yeah.
Yeah, when they had refabbed everything there in housing when they closed. And so.
Well, you've taught and you've continued teaching at the college for a number of years, but you've also continued coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So just because the sports program, kind of the official program, ends at ANC.
Well, here's the reason it ended, Miss Hartley.
Okay.
I don't know how to put this, but I got tired of dealing with some people.
Okay.
So I said, you can have it. And it was probably a big mistake on my part.
But your love for coaching continued, because you have coached for quite a few. You've continued that coaching role in your life.
Yes. I was, at that time, I was in a different building from everybody else.
Okay.
I was at the Moore Center, and I had you as a student, I think.
I believe back in 1990, maybe 5 or 6. Yes, in the interest of full disclosure, I did have Coach Tyer for, I don't think they called it Fitness for Life at the time. It seemed like it was something else. But the basic requirement for physical activity, yes. And the Moore Center was a decent building for that class, but it was kind of small, if I remember correctly.
See, the Moore Center originally was a cotton classing place where they brought the samples of the bales of cotton in. They were in like this and about that long. And you can imagine now the dust and the smoke. Yeah, my office was a closet.
At the Moore Center.
At the Moore Center, they had to go in the next room to turn the light on.
Well, in one of the things too that's changed over the years, because you're someone who can attest to infrastructure changes, probably on a scale that few people can. Because when you first started, the main building was almost complete, but as you point out, even the B wing still had like carryover into a trailer. Mm-hmm. So since then, there's been a lot more added. in addition, we, technically what was Mississippi County Community College merged with Cotton Bowl Technical College. So when looking at just the changes of the institution, infrastructure, what kind of, stands out to you from sort of that early building to what you see today?
See, we had a place in Paragould too, there at the hospital. There was an old motel, and they turned that into a place for ANC, and I taught there too.
What did you teach fitness for life, or did you teach? Because you've taught
No,
math.
I taught math for health sciences. I was the second person there that taught the math
for health sciences.
Yes.
And you've also in the past taught things like first aid.
Oh yeah, we had first aid, health.
Let me ask you a question, Coach Tyer, because this is something that in just higher ed and education all around, but we've seen kind of a pushing out of health classes, probably at a time where if you look at the population and some of the issues that we have health-wise, we need them more than ever.
Yeah.
Respond.
Well, we do need them. And see, we also had first aid. We had a number of classes. I don't know why they were taken out. But, other than your cognitive, this ain't working. The
Right.
body ain't working. This is.
And we've seen it taken out, too, for younger
Yes.
people.
We're
And
in a period of, I'd say, obesity.
And a little bit of cardio can go a long way.
Yes. Some of the people come in my classes and worried and everything. And the first thing I asked them, I said, well, can you put one foot in front of the other? They said, yes. I said, all right, then you can do something.
Yeah. Well, in some of those health lessons, something that I always remember from your class, and I've since, even expanded on it, learning on an evolutionary scale that, fat and sugar taste good. Our bodies, do have that craving for it, but at the same time, too, it's important to learn, why. But it's
well, it was more. Yeah, it was an end to stress. I love to talk that part about how we cope.
Mm-hmm.
Projection is being used a lot today.
Yeah. Well, and with all of your you have this amazing sort of insight and wisdom, but you've never really sought out, other than coaching, you've never really sought out a leadership position. You've always been somebody who's, I would dare say, almost prefers the student contact.
I do.
Yeah.
My family always said, why don't you go into administration? Why don't you? No, that's not for me. Just
teacher at heart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See, I tell people my my 8th grade math teacher taught me how to coach. You know how?
By teaching you.
I knew the answers. She said, Bill, you got to know the steps to get to the answers. And my father taught me this. To be successful, you got to take care of the little things. Anybody can see the big things.
Mm-hmm.
To be successful, you got to take care of the little things.
That's some really good advice.
Mm-hmm.
So over the years, from ANC, anything that stands out to you? Are there any particular, people, not necessarily just in the early phases and stages, but or classes that you've taught? Are there any sort of things that you would like to kind of get on record?
Well, we had a center I think in Kennett too. Well,
Really?
A lot of students come from Kennett, and the Boot Hill.
Yeah.
And then had the Paragould, and I guess Leachville centers, and those are probably pretty much nothing much now.
Do you think that has to do too with accessibility? You've been doing online courses now for several years.
Some of it, yeah.
Yeah. And it's also lack of population.
Yes.
For anybody listening, the county, Mississippi County, lost a substantial amount of population in the 50s and the 60s, but then also when the air base left, there's a substantial drop there. And, as I'm sure you know, Coach, you get the creation of the Pell Grants by Senator Pell.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't within a few years after that community colleges started to rise up, because the mission of community colleges, or I should ask you, what do you think has been the mission of a community college?
To reach out to people that didn't have a chance to get educated. And not only, do we offer that, we offer people to get their GEDs.
Yeah.
See, we had more. Then in the beginning, we had to do a lot of preparation for people that weren't ready for college to get to a college level classes. We did a lot of that.
Well, and as far as the institution goes, what stands out in your mind about some of the bigger challenges that it's faced? In addition to like population loss and the base closing, I mean, for the sake of community colleges, the fact that they did rise up kind of as a result of more federal funding, looking at the last close to 50 years, what would you say is something that was a challenge that in your memory?
Well, see, with all these grants and stuff, if you got a choice to go to UCA or ASU out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
See, there's more to college to me than the books.
Right.
It's socialization was one of the main things for me, other than learning.
Well, and you did a lot of things early on at the institution, like sports, that were a big draw. So when looking at just overall and your time in higher ed, do you have any like final just reflections for people?
Oh, that's a hard question.
Well, let me ask you a question. Was your education worth it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
My education was worth it. See, I'm still learning. I try to learn something every day. I still study my playbooks and want to keep up on the latest things that are happening in basketball.
Yeah. And so when you do you have any like career advice? Because there are a lot of young people out there who would like to teach and coach and would definitely see you as a person to seek advice from. So what would you say to the person who's 19 years old to come up to you and say, how could I have a career like yours? What would it take?
You got to follow your passion. I think I was called to coach. I really do. I remember the day I was sitting in Jonesboro in the parking lot, and I was thinking. I said, "Look," and I was kind of talking to myself. I said, "This is what you're good at. This is what you need to do." Because people change their minds once they get new information and get with different people.
Right. Well, there's definitely a lot of people out there who have been grateful to you.
Thank you.
For your advice and for the energy. And I think you're a good example of somebody who has put in a lot of hours and a lot of hard work, but at the same time, because you were passionate about it, it didn't always feel like work.
No, I never worked.
which is the really a really great goal. So do we have anything, so kind of as wrapping up, is there anything that we from the college or even from earlier that we didn't quite cover that you want to make sure we do?
Well, you're going to face adversity.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just got to take it head on. You take the lemon and make lemonade out of it.
And just keep going.
See, I've really got two personalities, Miss Hartley. I've got one when I'm coaching, and I've got another one that's me, I guess, myself. I don't know if sometimes I don't like people.
Yeah.
And I don't like old people.
Do you think you're a little bit like maybe Larry David?
Maybe.
Because you see, I know you love humanity, and you have hope for humanity.
Yeah.
Well, I have certainly appreciated you sitting down with me, Coach Tyer. It's been a real honor. I'm going to conclude our interview now, but with an open invitation of any time you have other things you want to add, all you got to do is ask.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.